This is an absolute privilege and pleasure for me to be here. As Jason said, we've been friends a long time. I have visited Stanford at different stages of my career as a resident applicant to general surgery and a fellow applicant for vascular surgery. And obviously, Stanford has a huge impact on the academic world of surgery. So other than Jason just basically gave my whole talk away, I would like to talk about my journey. These are my disclosures. And so just sort of what it really is a story. It's not a lecture. My kids tell me sometimes I start to sound like a TED Talk, and it's not an autobiography 100%. This is a quote by Teddy Roosevelt from the Citizens in a Republic, and he eloquently describes success not by what others think of you, but by the effort, the resilience, the grit of the doer. The leader learns from his mistakes. They're committed to the task. They have purpose, and in who their own heart know that their success is a product of learning from failures and persevering. This is and I found this a few years ago, and then sort of accidentally ran into it. My CEO has a giant poster up on the wall, and I'll just read it. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who knows at the worst if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. So to me, it sort of describes leadership, but also the surgical journey. I mean, how hard it is to be a resident and the tough days and the things that don't go wrong in the OR and the struggles of sort of making decisions and falling down and getting up and dragging yourself along. So I really wanted to get this tattooed on my bicep, but turns out my bicep's not quite big enough for that. So I do have a plaque in my office. So again, while some people get to climb an academic ladder straight to the top, I think for most people, our journey looks a little bit like this. I was going, Ken was the climber, right? And yesterday you were talking about it. I was like, this is the journey for many people, right? You get up, you fall, you slip, hopefully you got a rope, you get back up, you climb again. And there's a lot of joy to get to the top. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of hard work, and your fingers and hands and feet hurt a lot. So my story started long 55 years ago. I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa. And not in a million years could I have imagined myself standing in the front of Stanford University School of Medicine giving grand rounds on leadership. I'd stayed there for high school. My parents are from South Africa. My parents got divorced. My dad moved to the US. I was a pretty good student, but, I was one of those kids who wanted to be cool and not really show everybody how smart I was. A different time. We had mandatory athletics, but I wasn't very good. And so I tell my kids, don't peak in high school. It's, you don't need to be the top superstar. Where does the prom queen and the prom king end up? The captain of the football teams. So I think things have worked out okay. I came here for college. I went to Penn. I was very fortunate, a time where it wasn't impossible to get into schools like Penn. My SAT score would not get me into anywhere right now. I went to med school in New York because my family lived nearby and it was pretty good. And I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. There was no Grey's Anatomy at the time, but neurosurgery seemed like it would be really cool. Like, why not, right? But actually, I met a whole bunch of guys whose hair did not look anything like Dr. McDreamy, but who were inspirational in my career development. Frank Veith is the old guy. That was when he was 70. He's 93. He still runs his vascular meeting. And he was the most inspiring person I met in medical school. Spent time with the residents, taught you how to do a vascular exam, dragged you to clinic, took you to the OR, pointed stuff out, mean as anything. But when we made rounds, 20 people followed him around and he was the leader. I did some research with Tom Panetta and Mike Marin. Mike Marin, the bald guy on the left, is now the chair of surgery at Mount Sinai. Tom is the chair, I think, in Staten Island somewhere. And they've all really inspirational, really cool technology. And it was a really interesting time in vascular surgery. People were playing with technology, stents and catheters, but we didn't really know what to do with them. Malcolm Gladwell in his book Outliers, argues that the idea of an individual success is not really accurate, that really most successful people, they don't thrive without some environmental and social influences and a really good dose of luck, right? So I was fortunate to be at a place where cool things were happening, exciting things were happening, and Louis Pasteur says chance favors the prepared mind. And so this is Juan Perotti. Juan Perotti developed the endovascular aortic graft in 1990, in the late 80s, in Argentina, and he came and did the first EVAR at Albert Einstein when I was a medical student on the vascular surgery service. And this was like revolutionary, right? I mean, we were doing open aortic work, and here's a guy with a bunch of tubes and stuff, fixes an aneurysm from the inside. It's on TV, publishes in the paper, and kind of set the ball rolling. I was like, I want to be able to do that. So there were no integrated residencies in the 90s. And so I pursued wanting to be a general surgery resident and do vascular surgery. This was the first, to go back. So first implant, and then it was 92 in the United States, 99, we got a FDA approval, and now it's 80% of all aortic aneurysms are done by EVAR. I matched at USF. My wife that I met in college is from Tampa. I would put it high up on the list. It wasn't my first choice, but I think things worked out quite well. Dennis Bandick was my chief of vascular surgery. Joe Mills was a vascular attending there. He left shortly after, but you'll see Joe Mills on the left. He pops up again and again and again. Dennis was an amazing leader. I think to this day, I think back and say, what would Dennis Bandick do? He didn't work. No one worked harder. He wrote papers. He went to meetings. He showed up early in the morning. He stayed late at night. He was always available. He was technically talented. He was empathetic. I remember being at work one day at the VA on a Jewish holiday, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "It's work." He's like, "Isn't it a holiday for you?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You should go home." That didn't happen with a lot of people. I had this great opportunity. My fellow at the time, Brad Johnson, had spent a year in Australia, and he's like, "You got to go." My wife heard about it. She's like, "You got to go. We got to go." So we took an extra year. I spent a year as a vascular surgery registrar in Sydney, Australia, and I recommend an opportunity if you get a chance to go experience a healthcare system somewhere else, work with different people, learn slightly different techniques. But the best part about that was in 1999 in Australia, EVAR was widespread. There were three commercially available devices. So I got to do EVARs when really no one in the US was doing it. Very few people, unless you were in very specialized centers, you were not getting access to technology. And I probably did 100 EVARs that year. Got to meet the people at Cook, went out to Perth, see the company, learned about device manufacturing. And then the other thing about Sydney is, 40-hour work week. They really like to live, enjoy your free time, work hard, get a sense of what's going on. I remember the first, after a few months, they're like, "Why do you come in and round on Sundays?" I'm like, "Well, isn't that what?" They're like, "No, the sisters will round on Sundays." And the patients turn out, they don't die on Sundays when you don't go to work. So there was a little bit of this sort of like understanding boundaries. I went to WashU. Greg Sicard was a master. He was really a master of the universe, SVS president, and just technically incredible, affable, always available, just a hardworking guy. I spent a year in the lab with Rob Thompson, understanding the pathophysiology of aneurysm disease, learning about matrix metalloproteinases. We did some basic science research and kind of gave me a little bit of a sort of understanding of what I wanted to do when I was done. And I went back to USF and was fortunate enough to be recruited. I looked at a bunch of jobs, but I felt safe there. And I think maybe that's sort of the thing. Like, I felt a relationship with Dr. Bandick and the team there. I felt that I would be valued, that I could bring something that they didn't have. And I think those people look around for jobs, maybe not going to I got recruited at a couple of Ivy League programs, and I just wanted to go back where I felt I'd be part of the team. I could bring value. I could contribute back. And I was, at a time, really like a person who had learned a new skill set that they didn't have there. I got a few bucks from the chair, Dr. Carl, and his name will come up again. We wrote some papers and really sort of worked with the residents who were interested and motivated. And that was probably the most inspiring part. Brent Keeling is a cardiac surgeon at Emory now, but he really helped. I mean, he spent 2 years with me in the lab. We did everything from basic science to infected grafts, take advantage of your environment. Dennis Bandick was a big basic science, not big infected graft person. So really use your environment, what comes naturally, the stuff that's there, use the local environment. We did some MMP stuff. We wrote some papers on graft infections. We collaborated with the bariatric program, and did some stuff. And the fellows and residents really became engaged. And people who are enthusiastic about doing research make other people enthusiastic about doing research. And then you started doing some complex stuff, and then you gather data about what you do and what you like to do and what you get to be good at, and you make a name for yourself, and you write papers, and you go to meetings, and the referring community. I remember the first time I got a call about some complex thing. Some referring physician was like, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never seen anything this hard and never done one of these. And, I'm a year out of training. I'm like, sure, we'll take it. You're in practice 20 years and I'm the expert. That doesn't sound right. But, so you just get, build your reputation. Then we got started the 05 thing. So I think that one of the greatest sort of career moves that ever happened to me was Dennis asked me to become program director in 2007. He said, there's this new thing called the Integrated Residency Program. You should fill out an application. How do you do that? Well, here, figure it out. So we started an integrated residency program in 2007. We really, I think we're the fifth, Jason, not the third, but we wanted Michigan, Dartmouth, there was like University of Pittsburgh, really one of the beginning programs. We had to figure it out on the fly. And ironically, Juan Perotti invented the E-bar. Son Ezekiel was my first resident. Circle. So we looked at a bunch of stuff and validated assessments, and then we started looking at resident satisfaction. I worked with Jason some papers. What do the vascular residents do? Where do they go? Can they operate? There was a lot of controversy about, is there an integrated resident equivalent to a general surgery fellowship trained person? And it's just an opportunity to engage the residents and stuff that we like to do. Worked with this guy, Pat Kelly, on sort of helping him study a graft that he invented for complex EVAR. We got a physician-sponsored IDE. We had to solve complex problems, so we came up with our own solutions. This is a modified EVAR that we turned into a 4-vessel branch graft. We felt that now we had enough volume, enough presence to create an aortic center. I worked with the cardiac surgeons. We put structure in place, protocols, partnered with industry, got another IDE for physician modified grafts. So as the ball starts rolling, things start happening. And again, a lot of it was being in the right place at the right time, having the right support, having support from the leadership, having a good program director, division director and chair who let us do stuff like that. So, I think with respect to research and getting engaged, find something that you're passionate about, identify topics that you can become an expert in, collaborate with your peers, find people like Jason who were friends and other people who did the same stuff. We work together, we combine data, and you build your brand nationally and locally and within your community. So talking about building your brand, it's really about engagement. I think if you want to be recognized, you have to be around. You have to contribute. When you go to meetings and you participate in conference, speak up. People will only know you if you speak up and they hear your voice and know that you're interested. And so be engaged, be present. When you go to stuff, make sure that people know you're there. Stand up at the meeting, ask questions, be available. Always answer your phone, be your pager. You respond to emails. Really, I think responding to emails is critical. And volunteer for stuff. No one's going to. You're going to get asked to do stuff, but it's much better if you volunteer. Build relationships in your community, at these societies. That's how you build recognition and be patient. I think promotion, leadership opportunities will come, but I think if you push too hard, you potentially put yourself in a place that you're not quite prepared for. So, again, comes up these 5 A's of success: affability, be nice, respond, don't be an ass, jerk, mean, be available, and that really means 24/7 these days. You have to have ability. So ability is knowledge and skill. So you need to study, you need to read, you need to know what you're doing, you need to practice your skill set, and you really need to be good. You can learn those things. You just need to practice. Be adaptable. Not everything is going to work out 100% perfect the first time, and you got to be ready to pivot and be aggressive about what you want to do, not in a negative way, but in a sort of like ambition and passion, and sort of be active. I think I have a lot of faculty like, well, we don't have any volume, no one's coming. Like, well, go out and find it. You got to be active in this world, in this career. So how do you get to the next level, right? So I think academic promotion is one of those things that's sort of challenging. Not everybody has to go around it the same way, but I think engagement in national societies is critical. You got to volunteer for committees. You got to be engaged. You got to show up. You got to look for leadership positions. You got to, and it's extra work, right? So this is that like balance. What does it mean? Another committee meeting, another call at 5 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night. But be engaged at the medical school level, at your hospital, within your division, in your department. I think academic societies has really been sort of one of the most fun things about vascular surgery. It's a relatively small group, and it's the same people over and over again. But there's lots of opportunities for different pathways. Basic science, clinical research, young physicians, older physicians, opportunities for leadership, but really, I think, focus on societies where you can build your career, where you're going to learn something, where you can contribute something. You have to attend, you got to be present, you got to be engaged, and you got to build opportunities to network in your field. There's a whole bunch of people that have been really impactful in my career, and many of them are sitting in this room. Dr. Dahlman, Jason, our friends that we've made in our group have really been sort of the basis, I think, for like the joy of vascular surgery. It's where you build a reputation. It's how you get leadership opportunities. It's where you network and get friends and colleagues. It's how you demonstrate leadership. There's opportunities where you can be mentored and you can mentor. Like the VEST program has a great mentorship program. Some junior guy called me the other day, would you be my mentor? We talk every couple of weeks on the phone, and it's really a great opportunity. And there's research and innovation. So for me, a couple of societies have been really impactful. The Program Director Society, which I worked with Dr. Dahlman and Jason, and all of these people have really sort of inspired me. Joe Mills, that I worked with for a month, was the president when I started in 2007, and sort of a year later put me on a committee, and then I chaired a committee, and then I became another committee, another committee, another committee. Then I decided that I really wanted to, really work towards being president, and didn't get it the first time, and didn't get voted in, didn't get it the second time. Said, well, I'm going to give one more shot. And so I think that worked out. And then I got to be the president, and now Jason's the president. And it's been a really incredible journey. And lasting friends. I mean, these are our friends that we have a chat group with many of these people where we discuss all the issues of, med bikini and virtual interviewing and all the challenges of this transition through COVID and leadership within program directors and what do people do. VEST has also been incredible. This is the Young Vascular Surgery Society, but it's where I gave my first national presentation. I was a fellow at WashU. And again, the people, you remember the standing up at the podium, you remember the questions and engagement, and it's sort of really amazing opportunity. And then I became the chair of some committee, and then I got to represent the society at the American College and be a governor on the American College. And then I got to be a representative of the SVS advisory, the board of directors, and when Dr. Dahlman was the president. And again, so it's just an opportunity to be in the Hamilton line, be in the room where it happens. And that doesn't happen without showing up and giving extra. So really, again, so we built this network. So when I'm at work or when I go to meetings, it's not really work. It's fun. I get to see my friends. We hang out. We talk about our lives, and we bring our families, and we do fun things. This is actually a bunch of us in Lake Como on the way to a meeting in Strasbourg. So you build some fun in it. So it's not just work all the time. I think you have to obviously look at the journey. You got to work on the committees in the medical school and the hospital, and that's led to being program director, and then it led to an opportunity to be a division director, and then I became a vice chair, and then I had the opportunity to be selected as chair of our department. But you got to manage the time challenges. There's always going to be competing interests. You're going to compromise on a lot of things, and you have to make the decisions of where the value is, what brings you joy, and so and really have a positive attitude about it. And so it is hard work. And there's a line that people say, when you do what you want, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I think it's a little bit more. This is my friend Gretchen Schwartzy, and I won't read it out loud, but it says, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Work super hard all the time with no separation or any boundaries, and also take everything extremely personally, which is probably more realistic. And so it's really important that we create our own boundaries. So, somebody, I think Ken asked me yesterday, when did I decide I want to be a division director and a chair? Didn't decide, it just happens. It's part of the journey. But we looked at sort of, this is Adam Tanius is one of my residents who transferred to Mass General and now works at MUSC. You want to write a paper about like what makes a chair, and there isn't really an algorithm. There isn't a set of rules or what it takes to become a chair. If you look retrospectively who the chairs are, turns out if you trained at Hopkins at any point in your life, that's probably the number one characteristic of it, defines a department of surgery chair. But it becomes not about you anymore. A good friend of mine at University of Washington, Ben Starnes, told me that when I was looking at division chief jobs, it becomes not about you. You really have to be at that point in your career and in your journey where you can say, it's really about me giving everything I got to other people. You have to create a vision, and you got to work on professional development for yourself and other people. You got to really focus on being equitable and fair and inclusive. You got to have mentors and be a mentor, and you got to set really, really clear expectations and accountability. And I wish I'd kind of done all this reading and learned these things when I first had my kids, because it turns out setting expectations and holding people accountable works really well for parenting too. This is Dick Carl. So Dick Carl was my chair when I finished residency, and he was the chair who recruited me back and was the chair for my first 7 or 8 years of working. Dick retired from surgery and became a full-time pilot. He worked as a commercial pilot for Southwest and then flew private jets, and has his own jet, but he's getting a little old. He has to get rid of his jet. But he writes for Flying Magazine and still does. This is back from 2015, and pilots often get compared to surgeons, or surgeons get compared to pilots. Our training sort of gets compared. Why can't you use simulation? So the sort of summary of this, this is talking about leadership in pilots, but pilots often get compared to surgeons. A good leader needs to be technically competent. That sits well for surgeons also. Enough passion and curiosity to remain interested. So you can't just be like off on your own. You need to be abreast of old and new challenges. You need to have a good sense of humor. And I think that sort of goes to be, you need to be able to sort of let go of some of your emotions. You need to have excellent communication skills. You need to have confidence and calmness. You need to have humility. And you need to fly regularly to maintain currency and understand the current work conditions, which really, I think, goes to sort of being present in the OR and understanding what's boots on the ground and knowing what's happening. You can't really be the leader who doesn't understand that the first cases aren't happening and SPDs not bringing you instruments and your turnover times. He continues that you need to also be far ahead enough to lead the team, but not too far that not too far that you can still be seen, but not too close that they trip over you. So good leadership is letting your team do their work. They can see you pulling them ahead, but not getting in your way. It really, and sort of in final summary, a good leader, when I see them, I respond with the best that I've got. So, well, these are great. These are some of the sort of sports greats. I know Jason's a huge fan. I didn't put any Warriors in here, but I do have Kobe. So, but what do they all have? They didn't do this alone, right? They had really good education and coaching. There's Greg Popovich in the top there, who turns out to be an outstanding coach. But none of these people would have been successful. They're all talented. They're all ambitious. They're all like all of you and us. We've worked really hard to get here. And you do your training, and then you sort of just get told to go figure it out, right? So you're expected to learn on the job, and you pick up some bad habits, and you get no real coaching. So you kind of have to find your own way to learn this stuff. So I was really fortunate, I think, because I think in 2007, Dick Carl and the dean selected me to be part of this leadership program, which started at USF. We sort of built a year-long program, but it could have been that they were trying to protect me from myself. I was arrogant, I was entitled, I thought I was really great, and maybe what they thought was I needed some coaching. And so I don't know. I wasn't going to go with they thought I was going to be a great leader, and they sent me the training. But I don't know how it worked. But sort of this is the meme that my CRNA sends me often. And again, be cautious not to be that person, right? This is the typical surgeon. And leadership is, for being the captain of the team is not necessarily being a pirate captain. You don't have to yell and scream and throw instruments and have people jump off the ship, right? The key is to build that fine line between arrogance and confidence and be a leader. So I don't think surgical training does a very good job in building leaders. You're hierarchical, you become an intern, you go through training, become a chief resident. Chief resident does not necessarily mean you're a good leader. Our culture historically picks really coercive people to lead, the person who's the most productive, the busiest, who's the smartest. But poor leadership facilitates really unprofessional behavior. And I've seen that. The really strong residents who can get everything done then goes into practice and becomes the person who gets sent to disruptive physician training or courses because they sort of take that arrogance. The hierarchical vertical leadership structure within our departments and divisions leads to this separation and lack of teamwork and really siloed structure. So I really recommend that people take courses. And I think that a good department leader will invest in their faculty and send them to some of these things. I did the program at Harvard for a year, and I'm actually going back in January and doing another 2-week program. I think there's a lot of value in learning skills that you assume we have, but we really don't have. Michigan does a really great job. They looked at a program where they put together a leadership program for their physicians, and what they found was the faculty were really aware that they were unprepared for leadership. They were looking for tools and opportunities to develop the leadership skills, and they wanted to take on more responsibility, but didn't really know how to manage that. They wanted to learn more about effective communication. They wanted to learn about team building. They wanted to learn about finance and marketing, strategic planning, and organizational structure. So how many of you guys learned that in residency? Not so. So, I think everyone knows what emotional intelligence is, but it's really that sort of self-awareness. It's knowing that you don't know something about yourself and being reflective to say, what I do is sort of should be tempered by how other people see me. I was chair of our professionalism committee at the hospital for 2 years, and it's amazing how many people I was doing it for patient, it was the right thing, but they're yelling and screaming and cursing and making other people feel bad. But it was for the patient. But all the other people think you're a really unprofessional person. So having that awareness of yourself, being present and focused and just aware is really critically important. I have a 16-year-old daughter who wants to go to medical school. She's doing a study in emotional intelligence in surgical residence. So we'll come back and figure that out. Culture, I think, is also critically important. Like, what is that? It's the set of values and conventions and our behavior that brings us together as a team. So this is the most recent book that I read on sort of leadership and culture. It's amazing. It's not that new, but it's amazing. I recommend it to every one of you. There's stories, war stories and sports stories and restaurant stories. And I don't want to go on and on and on, but there's this sort of like building of a team. And there's a story about the Flanders trenches in the First World War, where the Germans and English were fighting and shooting and killing, and then sort of around about Christmas they started singing songs, and then people started coming out of the trenches, and they actually took a day off the war and hung out and told stories, and because they were all in the same environment, but doing things that they had to do, but then really wanted to be a part of a team. They talk about Popovich and the San Antonio Spurs, so in his career, he supposedly won 117 more games than he should have been expected to do. And it's really about taking care of his team. After a big loss, he'd still take them out to dinner, buy wine, go check on everybody, shake hands, hugs and kisses. And the next day really beat them up. So giving really, really important feedback needs to be done at the right time, right? So you can't give negative feedback when people are really down. So this is sort of like a really great video on teamwork. So this is startling murmuration. So murmuration, yeah, murmuration. Starlings can't talk, they don't have radar, they don't have cell phones, they don't text. But when they are being attacked, these tiny little birds, and they're being attacked by a falcon, this happens. This is Bruce Gewirtz is the chair of surgery, was the chair of surgery at Cedars-Sinai as a vascular surgeon. And again, he writes this book. It's really thin. It's like take you 30 minutes to read. It's really, I think, excellent about being really genuine. And this comes up over and over and over again. Be optimistic. Find joy in what you do. It's really hard to lead people if you're miserable. Leadership is really could be defined by a whole bunch of different traits. And there's different parts of leadership that you will need on different days. Sometimes you got to be really inspiring. Sometimes you have to be really authoritative. Sometimes it's important to be democratic and get a sense of what everyone else wants to do. But typically this authoritative leadership style is the most strongly positive. You have to be self-confident. You have to be empathetic. You have to drag. You have to sort of pull people along. Come with me. You can't tell people, you have to do this. They have to want to join you. This book about leadership talks about really being clear on your values, listen to others, observe others, articulate what you stand for, which I think is critically important. So this is active leadership is a program that our CEO of the hospital, John Corris, has developed. John Gutty is a doctor of business while running our hospital, and he talks about authenticity, kindness, transparency, and vulnerability. And this really builds engagement, psychological safety, and trust. So everyone knows what being authentic is, but it's really being honest about yourself, representing yourself in a way that reflects your core values, being considerate, and the behaviors that go with authenticity about really soliciting feedback. You want to know what other people think about you in a really honest way, and being honest with each other is really critically important. You need to be a role model and keep promises. When you can't keep a promise, you got to really be honest about why you couldn't keep a promise. So be accountable, be kind. Check in on your people, offer help, be appreciative. So John shows up every single morning to the hospital with a box of donuts and coffee for the valets at the hospital. And it doesn't cost a lot of money, but they just acknowledge his presence and they love him for it. Be available, help in the OR, pick up trash, be a leader and a role model, right? Be transparent. I think you really got to make sure your team knows what you're thinking, and they want to know what you're thinking, and really being. I sit in a lot of meetings where people don't say anything. There's no questions asked. And so one of the things I make people do is say, we have 100% consensus, somebody has to disagree just for the sake of communication. And and this vulnerability thing, I'll talk a little bit about that more, but you have to be willing to make mistakes. You can't always be protecting yourself from failure. So I think vulnerability is that sort of risk taking. And then apologize when and take responsibility when you mess up. This is like a whole TED talk to itself, but Brene Brown is a coach. She actually does have a TED talk program. I think if you have time, listen to it on your way to and from work. It's really influential. Jason talked about it at his VEST presidential talk, and then I read the book. It's, I think, really important to sort of reflect. It's an emotion that we experience when times of uncertainty, and we don't always know that we're right, but you have to sort of have that confidence and willingness to make a mistake. You got to show some courage. It's not weakness to be wrong and to take chances, and it's not comfortable, right? So we all want to do things that we feel like we're really confident in, and sometimes you just have to go to a place that's not like that. So she has these 16 sort of like theories on leadership. This armored leadership is this, I'm really protecting myself and I'm not being honest, I'm not being authentic, and you do things. And then this daring leadership is the opposite. And I'll just quickly go through some of them, but it's most of these fit just perfectly into surgery. Perfectionism, we have that, right? So the enemy of good is better. And so sometimes just working to a point where you're not going to be perfect, but people can work together. practice gratitude, celebrate small milestones, really give back to your team on the little things they do, like especially up the admin folks and the nurses and the people in MAs, like they really appreciate just the thank you, the OR team, the techs, I say, be thankful every day. Set boundaries and we certainly avoid burnout. I mean, alcoholism, drug use in physicians is quite high. So just find other ways to sort of let go of stuff. This, I think, is a pretty standard surgical approach, and always being right. Sometimes you got to listen to other people, and it's not critically important to be right, but rather to have clear communication and listen to others. Be kind, and that's sort of same in that active leadership. Hustling your worth. So this is standard surgical strategy. I'm the most important person in the room. I bring the most value. I do the most cases. I do the most RVUs. But I think that it's not about you. It's about the team and getting things right. And sort of that you don't need to seek validation all the time. This is, I thought, a good way to sort of, as we assign responsibility as a leader, but even on your teams, when you tell the intern to go do something, be very clear about who owns the task. Do you have the authority to get the task done and to be held accountable? Can you set people up for success? And sort of, if you need to have a checklist, put a checklist together. Let's skip that one. This, I think, again, it's how many times you ask a surgeon, how are you? I'm so tired. I worked so hard. I worked 27 hours or 50 hours. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. Just figure out a way to protect yourself, avoid burnout, depression. It's okay to rest and have fun. Obviously, diversity. And this, I think, as we evolve, you keep thinking you got to keep doing what you did to get to the point in your career where you had to get there. So this collecting gold stars. I think as you become a leader, it's really important that you stop trying to collect more gold stars and start giving out the gold stars. You really want to acknowledge people and reward other people. And they need to be clear. So this, don't waste your time hiding from difficult decisions and avoiding responsibility. Go out and address it head on. I think it's really important. That authenticity, be kind, really brutal feedback isn't really isn't as helpful as sort of just tempering your feedback when necessary. Again, another book about leadership, which I thought was really interesting. There's this tribal leadership, and how many, this is like, I think your residency 1 through 5, right? Life sucks. Everything's horrible. It can't possibly get any better. Then it's sort of like, well, it's a little bit better. My life sucks, but can't do anything about it. And when you're a third-year resident, you're like, I'm the bomb. I can do this. And then you want to get to that next level where we're great. And I think really great surgery training programs have this, where the culture and the loyalty to the organization get to that point where we're great. And so that's when you become this tribe, right? It's a really interesting approach to sort of working together. And so many times you go back to this despair. You just really can't help people that led a stage 1. They're just those are the folks who show up, the disgruntled employee and hurt people. But again, it all becomes around having the right core values and having the same shared vision and sort of having like, why do we come here? Why do we want to be at Stanford Surgery? Like, what does Stanford Surgery stand for? Then do you have the right people on the team? Do you have enough faculty? Do you have enough residents? Are the behaviors, do we act professionally to get to the results that we want? This is awesome.
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen start to finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. Three is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come two more people, then three more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making.
So you want to get that first follower and treat them, you got to be part of the team. And that's sort of team building. So I think sort of in summary, be authentic, live by your values, be self-aware. Let me go back. Be fair, be equitable. I think I spent a lot of time trying to figure out fairness. Listen more, talk less. I have a really hard time with that one. But really, I think sitting in a room and listening is critically important. Delegate responsibility, trust people. They really do want to help. Communicate effectively. Conflict is necessary, but does not need to be negative. Be direct, do not be mean, respect other people's opinions. There should be value in collaboration. You need to plan very well. You need to take risks. Everyone can be replaced, even you, even me. People do want to be valued. You got to let go of your ego, and culture drives results. So what are we doing about? So Joan Quinn is one of our faculty at the medical school. She is in the business school. In fact, we're starting a leadership program for our residents in January, and we're going to focus on all those things, sort of like they did. She wrote this book called Cultivating Leadership that she uses for the medical students, and we're going to put a program together, sort of a grand rounds every month for the residents. How do you make it all work? What is work-life balance to me? It's having fun and seeing my friends at home, enjoying my family, being at work, traveling, going to meetings. You got to be mindful of your career aspirations. And sort of, I tell a lot of people, timing can't always be perfect. I've been very lucky, but I turned down things which would have made me move, which might have derailed my career. I looked at lots of opportunities along the way. Maybe it brings self-value and self-worth. You got to be patient. You got to have very clear goals. And again, they're not always set in stone when the day you start, right? Things might change. Be patient, be resilient. Compromise is hard. Your career needs to be important to you, and your family needs to understand that. But you really need a good partner and a good family that knows what your values are. And I think just being clear to your values. You need a good support system, both at work and at home. This is my work team, my family, my work family, cases I love to do. So that on bottom left was the recent hurricane. That's our CEO, CMO. Chief medical officer, and us serving food for 6 hours a day at the cafeteria. The CEO spent the 3 days of the hurricane in the hospital working with the team. Find things that you like to do. So I'm incredibly thankful to everyone. And so I think this is a great quote by Albert Einstein. Try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. And I think that's sort of what leadership is to me. And this is LeBron. And if you look at his shoes, it says "man in the arena," which goes back to that Teddy Roosevelt quote about being the man in the arena. Thank you.